we are introduced to a family consisting of 3 people and 1 cat. A mother named May, her disabled son Pat, and a daughter named Pim. In the morning, the whole family gets ready to go about their business, the mother to work and the children to school. Pim is going to become captain of the girls' cheerleaders. Her best friend fully supports her in this. Returning home, Pim sees his brother and a friend, and not paying attention to them, the girl goes to the room to change clothes. Pat's friend decides to spy on the schoolgirl, but she notices him. Pim starts screaming. The guy is clearly not going to leave and is acting like a maniac. Pat can't do anything because of problems with his leg. He tells the arrogant guy not to interfere with his sister, but he threatens with some video on his phone. We are given to understand that this guy is blackmailing Pat. In the evening, the mother stays late at work and says that she will finish soon and will go home. She does so, but on the way, she gets into an accident. An expensive car crashes into her. The children, not knowing what happened, hear someone starting to knock on the door. An unfamiliar man introduces himself and says that he is their grandfather, whom they have not seen since childhood. He takes the children to the hospital. The doctor says that their mother is in a coma and her life is not in danger, but it is unknown whether she will wake up. There is also a grandmother at the hospital who easily recognizes Pim, but does not recognize Pat and calls him by a different name. The old people report that now the children will live with them. In the morning, brother and sister come for breakfast. Grandfather explains to the children that grandmother has dementia, and sometimes she does not understand who is in front of her, and sometimes she does not even know who she is. The grandmother made breakfast for her granddaughter and poured a mug of milk for Pat. In the afternoon, Pat returns home with the cat from her previous apartment. Pat notices some kind of hole in the wall. Looking into it, he sees another apartment. Apparently, it has been abandoned for a long time. Suddenly, the door to the pantry begins to open, and Pat sees a scary girl behind it. At dinner, Pat doesn't finish some vegetables, and his grandmother scolds him for that, and for not drinking enough milk. It also turns out that the cat is missing. The grandmother says that she let him out for a walk, and it doesn't matter to her that he is a house cat. After dinner, the children decide to show their grandfather the hole in the wall. However, he says that he doesn't see any hole, just like Grandma. The children are again scolded for lying. Brother and sister don't understand why grandparents don't see this hole. Pat believes that there is something wrong with this house, and Mom never brought them here for no reason. He also asks Pim a question. Is she sure that these are really their grandparents? At breakfast, Grandma again gives Pat a huge glass of milk and makes him drink it all. During the day, the same guy who blackmailed him comes to Pat. He came only to see Pim. Pat hears something scratching behind the wall and decides to look through the hole. There he sees a scary girl. He asks his friend to look too, but he says that he doesn't see any hole, but decides to look there. Something pulls him to the wall and breaks his nose. He thinks that Pat did it and leaves promising revenge. At this time, Pim returns and Pat says that the idiot from school has a video of Pim washing himself in the shower. But because of this incident, he forgot his phone, and Pim immediately deletes the recording. She also finds out that he received the video from her best friend. When the grandmother returns, she sees the blood and loses her mind again and becomes hysterical. She also calls Pat by a different name again, Pina. At night, everyone wakes up to the grandmother screaming loudly and lying on the floor. Grandfather says he will deal with this in the morning. Pat doesn't feel well and has a cough. Grandma gives him milk again. It turns out that the grandfather is a former police chief. He decides to start his own investigation and find who is responsible for the accident. The owner of the car is the son of a wealthy businessman. The son said he wasn't driving, but the grandfather doesn't believe it and thinks that this guy gave a bribe. While the adults are not at home, the grandchildren decide to look through the hole again. They see a girl there who is constantly vomiting blood, and Pim also sees her with a baby in her arms, humming a song. And Pim recognizes this melody. Pat says that this neighbor girl is most likely a phantom. In the evening, the cat returns home, and at night Pat sees that same girl sitting on her sister's bed, and she hummed the same tune. In the morning, Pat gets worse and wakes up covered in blood. The grandmother goes up to her grandson and brings milk with her. Pat asks her about his mother and finds out that his mother was the same as Pim, the captain of the cheerleaders. Her life was simply wonderful. During the conversation, Grandma goes crazy again and gets angry that the milk hasn't been drunk yet. As Grandma leaves, Pat accidentally breaks a mug of milk and is licked off by a cat. Meanwhile, Pim becomes the new captain of the team, and it turns out that her best friend also participated in the competition. Pim catches her friend in lies and hypocrisy. In the evening, Patu only gets worse, and Pim decides that it is because he is looking into that hole in the wall. However, the noise makes them look there again. This time they see the same girl who looks even worse, and a man lies next to her and does not pay any attention to her. The children finally understand that the room in the hole looks exactly the same as the room they are in. They ask Grandfather about the girl who died. Grandfather says that he doesn't see any hole and doesn't know what they are talking about. He closes a hole in the wall with a closet. However, in the evening, the closet falls. The grandfather decides to deal with the guy who crashed into his daughter himself. He finds him and stops him using his old form. He pours alcohol on it and sets it on fire. At this moment, Mom comes to her senses. The doctors tell her that everything will be fine, and the children are now living with their grandparents. Hearing this, the mother gets ready and quickly goes after her children. Meanwhile, the grandmother comes to her senses and begins to hear a sound coming from behind the wall. The grandchildren notice this. She tells them that for 15 years, this sound and this hole has been haunting her, and her grandfather thinks that she is crazy. Pim looks through the hole and sees his mother holding the baby. She calls some Pinya. The grandparents who came up look much younger than they do now. The grandmother is trying to drive her grandchildren away so that they don't look, but they don't listen to her. It turns out that Pinya is the sister of Pat and Pim. She is found dead in a pantry under the stairs, while her father continues to sleep after getting drunk. Grandma tells what happened. In her story, a vile father locked his daughter in a pantry, and there, the girl died after drinking rat poison. They show us how it happened. The father turns out to be an artist. He looks like a loving and kind father. Pinya has been disabled since birth. She asks her dad to play hide and seek with her and hides in a pantry. The father falls asleep drunk. Then the grandmother says that when she and May went upstairs, only the child's father and grandfather remained in the room. The women, hearing the sound of a gunshot, run downstairs and see that the girl's father has shot himself. That's what grandfather said, and the bullet mark is strangely located on the forehead. During the story, Pat becomes ill again and spits out blood. The grandmother brings milk and says that he will feel better. She takes the refusal to heart and begins to forcefully pour milk into the child. A mother approaches her house and sees her dead cat. She breaks into the house and stops the old woman. At this moment, grandfather comes with a gun. The brother and sister tell their mother that they already know what happened. Pim realizes that grandma gave milk to Pat for a reason, and she decides to try it too. However, the grandmother forbids it. Everyone begins to guess what is happening. A mother asks a question to her mother. Why did Pinya really die? And the grandmother confesses that she hated her daughter's husband with all her heart. Because of him, they had a disabled child, and she couldn't accept that such an ideal daughter would have such a child. So she gave her milk with rat poison, which killed the child. On that very day, she was the one who locked Pinya in the pantry. Pat turned out to be the same imperfect child, and she decided to repeat the same thing with him. The mother promises that the old people will pay for their sins and takes her children away. Very soon, one night, the grandfather receives a call in which they say that the guy whose car crashed into May was killed, and suspicion falls on him. But there is another piece of news. A dashcam recording was received, and it is clear that the guy was not lying. It really wasn't him who was driving. Grandfather hears his old woman screaming again and lying on the floor. Something strange is happening to her. The grandmother sees her dead granddaughter. The grandfather sees that the old woman has already drunk rat poison, and then she turns into a burnt guy. The grandfather takes out a revolver and shoots him, but does not notice how he kills his wife, after which he puts a bullet in his head. Time passes, and we see the mother and children come home. They are happy that everything terrible in their story is over, and they can continue to live. Mom tells the children about their father and says only good things about him. The only problem he had was alcohol. She also tells them about their sister and says that she loved to hum a song for little Pim. But at the end of a happy story, they show us what really happened. Grandfather didn't kill the young father of his grandchildren. He was just about to teach him a lesson, but at that moment, May takes a pistol out of its holster and shoots him in the forehead. Grandfather asks in shock, "What have you done?" And he puts the gun in the hands of the dead man. And this is where the film ends. Be sure to write your opinion about it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This is the only way we understand what films you like in retellings.